Safety 365.
Welcome to Safety 365, where our goal is to help you navigate more safely through your daily activities and understand the importance of taking proactive measures to safeguard yourself. I am Bill Barna. I'm your host today. With me, I'm going to have a guy named Nick Santucci. He's currently the Senior Consultant for Workforce and Community Engagement at VAZA Consulting, and most importantly, the Republican candidate for state representative. Nick, thank you very much for coming in today.
Thanks for having me, Bill. It's good to be with you.
Always exciting to have somebody of your caliber enter our studios. Hey, today we're going to be talking about speed cameras. Are they making us any safer? So we're going to have a good conversation on that one. I think a lot of people want to chime in on this one. Before we get started, I just want to let you know that Nick used to be a Howland student, and as I roamed the halls as a police officer for Howland PD, Nick was just a budding young politician at that time. I think he graduated the ripe year of 2009.
Yes, sir. Yes,
So
sir.
he's a young guy, definitely energetic, definitely has ideals, and definitely works for the people. Wants to do the best he can to make our area a better place.
Thank you, Bill.
Yeah,
Appreciate
hey,
that.
I only say what's true.
It means a lot.
Well,
Would be my honor to serve.
I know it would, and I tell you what, we're not supposed to say where we cast our votes, but wink, wink, Nick, I think you got mine.
Well, thank you, sir.
So before we get started too much, I like to go with a little thing we call the question of the day. Our safety question of the day is, does slower driving really mean safer driving? That's a question. What do you think?
That's a tough one, Bill. I would say probably not.
Probably not.
In my opinion.
Now, there's a political answer. It's not decisive. It's probably, or perhaps.
I would say probably not.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, Nick. Everybody thinks that, grandma driving a little bit slower than the speed limit makes everything safer. Well, actually, federal and state studies have consistently shown that the drivers most likely to get into accidents in traffic are those traveling significantly below the average speed.
Huh.
Yeah, right?
Because that disrupts the flow of traffic?
Everybody else is doing the right speed, and then you've got to come up on them now. They've got to make it. They've got to adjust to that speed. So according to an Institute of Transportation Engineers study, those driving 10 mile per hour slower than the prevailing speed are 6 times as likely to be involved in an accident. So in layman's terms, if the average speed on interstate is 70, the person traveling at 60 is far more likely to be involved in an accident than someone going 70 or even 80. So, you can check that out, the National Motorist Association speed limit fact sheet online.
That's pretty interesting.
Yeah, well, I mean, Ohio even has laws. Most states have laws called impeding traffic. In Ohio, it's 45, 11, 22. If you're just traveling at a speed slow enough to disrupt the normal flow of traffic, it's called impeding traffic. Don't know how often that's written, but it does happen.
Huh.
But
Awesome.
so we're going to talk about speed cameras and traffic safety and everything. But let's face it, nobody likes the guy traveling in the passing lane at the posted speed limit. If my wife would tell you one thing that would probably cause road rage for me, it's that. We make a lot of trips down south. I have a son that's in Kentucky, and we travel down the freeways quite a bit. And there's nothing worse than somebody in the passing lane just traveling at the posted speed limit, jarring everything up. I speak a lot of different languages at that point, and nobody likes it. So you can understand how, if you're not traveling with traffic or with the speed or with the flow of traffic, that slower speed can cause accidents.
Right.
Okay,
Right.
That's my take on all this. Now, I'm also from a generation that experienced a lot less governmental regulation and helicopter parenting, okay? When I talk about helicopter parenting of the public, I never had to wear a bicycle helmet, and I turned out pretty good. I only shake now and then. I drank water from the garden hose. I rode sitting backwards in a station wagon, unseat belted.
I was going to say no seatbelts.
No seatbelts. I'm crying out loud. Half the time you could climb up on the back dash of the car and lay down.
I've heard stories. My dad too.
Yeah, I mean that's what was fun. We didn't. I don't know. I walked to school both ways uphill, and snow this deep too. So I don't know how that's possible, but I did. Anyways, but so now it seems like the government is just overly concerned that I don't possess the common sense enough to keep myself safe. Nick, I know you're going to be one of these guys down there fighting for us, and unfortunately, you got to fight both sides of the battle because you got to come to a mediocre point where everybody's happy.
Right.
So let's just give some historical value to this whole speed, safety. People can't keep themselves safe, so the government has to do it. Let's remember that in 1974, you remember that, right, Nick? President Nixon actually rolled out the bright idea of a national maximum speed limit of 55 miles per hour to reduce traffic fatalities. That's what they touted it as. Okay. This was to reduce fuel consumption and to reduce traffic fatalities. So the best way for me to get this through the American people is to say it's a threat to your safety.
Right.
It's a threat to your safety, when in fact, it was all about the 1973 oil embargo. I mean, we don't know anything about that today, oil shortage or anything.
Right. Wow.
Or high gas prices. So I'll just let that go. Nick, traffic fatalities decreased statistically during that time period. That the traffic fatalities did decrease. But what they're not telling you on the other side of the statistics is, so did vehicular travel. Nobody could afford to travel because the gas prices were so high.
Wow.
So high gas prices, less travel, means less fatalities, less accidents.
Love that.
Yeah, I mean, it'd be a great time to be a cop, right?
Yeah.
Nobody's on the road.
That's right.
So we take all that in consideration. Let's look at some of the modern day traffic safety problems. All right, I mean, we're going to get to safety speed cameras here in a minute. But as a police officer, former police officer, I should say, I noticed that most of our accidents were caused by our advance in technology. This distracted driving is what's causing almost all of it. I got to be honest. You've got cell phones, texting, music,
Sure.
Passengers, and just younger drivers who really aren't aware.
Sure.
So, but I think the cell phone, everybody has to stay in contact 24/7. And I think when you're driving down the road and you're looking at your phone and you're trying to see, okay, who's texting me now? Or what's happening on Snapchat or Instagram? And you're taking your eyes off the road.
Right.
It's a big distraction. So we've come out with laws. In 2012, Ohio rolled out a statewide ban to say text messaging and driving, you're not allowed to do it.
Right.
Right? So we're going to cut down on this. Safety. Remember, safety. We're going to enact more laws to make you safer. So when you're talking on the phone while using a handheld device, is still permitted in Ohio unless you're under the age of 18. You're not allowed to use any portable electronic devices, even hands-free. But then they came out with, is it a primary offense or is it a secondary offense? So if you are texting and driving, can I stop you for just that, or do I have to say your taillight's out and then hit you with that?
Right.
How much emphasis are we putting on safety? Let's just make it look like we're making everybody safer, Nick. Come on, we'll come out with more laws, and we'll make it look like everybody's being safe.
Right.
When in fact, more laws are just more laws that don't get enforced to produce the right results.
That's a great point.
Yeah, I know I'm a little jaded here, but then we talked about there's always the drunk driver or impaired driver. These are no brainers. What are we doing to keep people safe? But these are some of the things that are a big threat to our safety.
Sure.
Right. So should we be doing maybe a little bit more about for the cell phone usage, the texting and distracted driving? Maybe do a little bit more with the drunk driving or impaired driving, but. Here's the problem, and as well as OVI checkpoints, specialized traffic enforcement programs, they all take money and they take police. It's very labor-intensive, very money-oriented. The cry of some of the American public for the last 2 years has been police are bad, defund the police, give them less.
It's disgusting.
It is disgusting, and I'm telling you, we're in for some reckoning here. But you're wanting police to go out there and do more for you, but you're wanting to give them less to make you safer. So it's kind of difficult for them to do the traffic enforcement
Sure.
and the drunk driving. So what else can we do? Well, all of a sudden now we've got it. Speed kills. It's speed. All right, this fast driving, this is it. Sure, traveling faster might decrease your reaction time, but it really isn't the biggest threat to our safety on the road, is it? I don't know. I mean, I have a hard time saying that speed is the biggest thing we have to be going after and utilizing these speed cameras. Your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so I've done a little research in preparation for today, and I see both sides of this situation. So you mentioned already, Bill, I said it's disgusting, and I wholeheartedly mean it, that the way police have been demonized. I have friends that are police officers that have been spit on, all in the name of whatever, and recognizing that those police individual interactions could become confrontational, like getting spit on, like getting hit, like being combative. These speed cameras do create a little bit of a barrier in between the individual and the police officer. So in my mind, that might be a good thing in some instances. On the flip side, we're talking about speed and things like that. I've also recognized too and seen numbers and data that show that these speed cameras are being used almost as speed traps. And so they're being utilized in
revenue
Right, so
gathering. Yeah. And I think the American public is feeling the same way.
Sure.
I agree with you, because listen, there's money to be made. Obviously, if you can make a buck, great. These police departments are struggling. All right, their state funding's getting cut.
Yep.
They've got to come up with some different creative ways. And kudos to the departments that have had taken advantage of the fact that, hey, I can get out there. We can try and get our officers better equipment, better training. And if we got to use this to pay for it, we do that. I get it, and I applaud those police chiefs out there that had the proactive approach to doing that. But at the same time, I think there was some sort of unfair. It was unfair to the public, because they were throwing these out there. They're taking these speed cameras and they're saying, "Listen, we're doing it for your safety." Let's be honest, people. The average American travels more than 14,000 miles a day. American drivers cumulatively travel 3.2 million miles each year. That's enough to take nearly 5,000 trips to the moon and back. Okay, so we have a very targeted audience, a very target-rich environment. Let's call it that. It's like shooting fish in a barrel. People are going to drive their cars. They're going to drive on the roadways. We know which roadways typically produce a higher speed and higher speed violations. So at about 1,200 miles a month, I can get Joe Citizen back and forth to work. Hey, you know our area here pretty well. If you go south on Route 11, I think you know exactly which bridge that guy's sitting on.
Sure.
The speed limit drops there. People traditionally will do the speed limit there for that quarter-mile stretch, and then they go right back up.
Yep.
So are we really creating it safer? But when you factor in that we travel so many miles per year, there's a high volume of traffic, and that these cameras produce a huge dollar amount to some ailing budgets, kind of lends itself to believe that we're policing for profit.
Sure.
That's the sad part. There was a study done of nearly 200 departments, found a 45% increase in the retirement rate, and nearly 20% increase in resignations in 2020 and 21 compared to the previous year. Now, why do I tell you that? Well, we want to do more with less, right? Cops are jumping out of the profession at a staggering rate.
Yeah.
So we have less cops. We still have to patrol the neighborhoods and the streets.
You bet.
And we still need to generate income to be able to train these guys and give them the equipment. That's where the speed cameras come in. That's where the money hits the bank, and I think that's where they're picking off the weakest in the herd.
Yeah.
Okay, speed cameras.
Well, and to kind of make this a state representative spiel, that's where I feel like I could really try to help and make a difference. So, bringing some of these dollars back from the state level to help our local police and our fire and our other first responders is, I think, really pivotal. And I know some of the current state reps have, Representative Loychek and Al Catrona and Mike Ruley and Senator Sandy O'Brien, they've all been working very closely with police, and I really want to be a tag team partner to them. Bringing those dollars back may help alleviate some of that crunch, so that maybe some of
folks, you're hearing it. Nick Santucci is the policeman's friend, and God bless him for that. You know what?
Unequivocally, I think what's happened to our police is, like I said, disgusting. That's not a political talking point. That's just my sincere feeling on the whole situation. You guys have been under attack, and so to your exact point, I can't wait to get elected so that I can get in there on day one, sit with some of our police and ask, what do you guys need? And then that's my job to bebop down to Columbus and get it done and bring some of those dollars back. And the reason I'm bringing all of this up is because then maybe we don't rely so much on the speed cameras. Maybe we're now getting additional revenue sources or getting some of these grant dollars or securing some of these external funds. So now we're changing our direction as a community, and we're securing these dollars, and we're doing soft movements and budgets, and now the speed cameras aren't so reliant.
See, that's where the experience from this guy comes in handy. He knows what the people need, and he knows the people in Columbus that can make it happen. So, all right, that brings us, kind of slides us into our next segment, and it's called You Don't Know What You Don't Know. And that is me on guitar.
I was going to say,
yeah,
Bill, do you play all these songs?
I was putting down a pretty mean riff there.
Really jazzy.
Yeah, I'm great. I'm great at that stuff. So you don't know what you don't know. Let's just bring some things to light. So President Joe Biden's infrastructure law actually has in it $15 billion in funding that can be utilized for speed camera to reduce traffic fatalities and increase traffic safety. They're touting it again, like the 73 oil embargo. President Nixon, they're going to use the safety as their cry for assistance. But only 10% of that can be used for speed cameras. So I feel better about this. They're only going to use $1.5 billion to buy these speed cameras for the different states.
Still a lot of money.
I feel so much better about that. $1.5 billion. I mean, why not? That makes a lot of sense. So now our federal government is going to provide funding for departments to get these speed cameras and pick off Joe Citizen going 10 miles over the speed limit, so they can increase their coffers. That's great. 19 states plus the District of Columbia use speed cameras. So, I mean, less than half of our states are actually using them. But I think with all this federal money, they might change their tune.
Sure.
It's a great way. I mean, it's all about money. We're trying to do stuff, but we need money. So how does it all work? A lot of people don't even understand what these speed cameras are all about. They truly think it's Officer Smith out there shooting a radar gun like he used to, and pulling the guy over, hearing an explanation, blah blah blah, making a determination, issuing a citation, and you're on your way. Well, it's no longer that way. It's equivalent to the self-checkout. You're taking jobs away from people, right? So how does it work? So municipalities and police departments will contract with a private company to utilize these speed camera devices. So these private companies share a percentage of the fines collected with the municipality or the PD. So what I'm saying is Bob's speed camera supply comes out with all these cameras. Podunk PD decides to go get these cameras. They basically lease these cameras. the officers go out and run these cameras and are paid by the private company, Bob's speed camera shop, and so the officer goes out there and they run these cameras. They're paid their overtime rate by the private company, which is also sharing getting the lion's share of the fines collected from these speed cameras.
So the dollars aren't even going to our the majority of the dollars are not coming to our communities?
That's correct.
Okay.
That's correct. So these private companies they get the data from the speed cameras. It goes to the private company. The private company runs it through the database to find out the vehicle registration, blah, 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 sends it back to the police department, who verifies it, yes, this officer did this, and then ships it back to the private company, who issues out these citation letters and says, hey, you were caught speeding. Here's a picture of you. You must pay this amount of money by this date, or you can appeal it, and we'll have a specialized appeal hearing that you have to come to, or the fine goes up. Okay, so just to let you know, I did a little research, and there's a company out there called Blue Line Solutions, and right on their website, it says, built by cops, for cops. I'm like, pretty bold, man. I mean, and I actually ran these things. I get it.
You ran the radar gun.
I ran, yeah.
You didn't run Blue Line, right?
I may or may not have. But I ran these devices, and they're sharp, man. I mean, they're right on. They're lasers. Boom. You hit that license plate, it records it, shows you the picture, speed violation, on to the next, and you could just sit there all day long. They definitely are effective. They're efficient. Okay, so I get that there's a need to try and slow people down, I guess, in certain instances. The problem is the money generated by these things is astronomical. Just with a little bit of research, Girard pulled in $3.5 million between 2016 and 2018. Youngstown, $3 million. Weathersfield, $2.5 million in a two-year length of time. That's a lot of money. I don't know how much safety was dispersed, but that's a lot of money. So it does lead you to question, why are they doing it? I mean, I hate to sound hypocritical, because I did run these things. It was part of my duty. It's what I was supposed to do. Sure. But the privatization and mixed with policing is just one of those things I think is a bad recipe. So, having said that, what you don't know is there's usually a time frame to pay for it or increase, yes, and you are provided an opportunity to appeal the violation at a designated time and place. Currently, most municipalities no longer have a role in adjudicating these charges or providing a payment plan. That's what's in the Supreme Court right now. These towns are saying, wait, yes, we do. Yes, we can start our own appeal process. And the judges are basically saying, no, you don't have the right to adjudicate or create payment plans based on civil violations like that.
I see.
So there's a lot of jawbone going on. How does it affect the common citizen? Well, they're turned over to a collection agency. So for those people out there listening to this streaming podcast, if you've received one of these tickets and you're like, holy cow, I got to pay $150, or I got to go appeal it, and then you decide not to, then they turn you over to a collections agency, and then you start getting hounded. Everybody worries about their credit. Everybody worries about their credit. Well, take heed, people. The good news is that the top 3 credit reporting agencies, Equifax, Experian, and TransUnion, have all said it cannot affect your credit. This is not a contract that you entered into with anybody, and you've negated your responsibility. This is just somebody trying to impose a fine on you. So your credit does not get impacted. That's the good news. All right. Yeah, everybody smile on that one. Okay. So what they've done in the legal realm is saying, hey, you can't appeal, you can't create your own appeal boards and adjudicate the fines. You can't say, oh, well, it wasn't 150. I'll slide you this piece of paper. You just pay this amount, and it's $50. Everybody's happy. Hey, I got 2/3 knocked off. I'll just pay it and be done with it.
Right.
So they can't do that anymore. But if the municipalities are being told that if you want to use these speed cameras, you have to file these tickets through the court, just like you would any other ticket. You must pay pay the fine or the fees associated with filing these tickets in the courts.
For the court, yeah.
And then, now these tickets are filed. Then you get notice that you were in violation. What do you do now? Well, they're not going to come after you. They're not going to issue a warrant for your arrest or a capias to come get you because it's a civil offense. They're going to turn you over to collections, same as they would before. And what happens? You're going to get some phone calls. Hey, you better pay your money. We're coming. Right? Yeah. We're going to come and take out your niece. No, I mean, it's all about trying to get the money out of you. So, end of the day, it is your decision whether you want to pay it, appeal it, or disregard it. At the end of the day, it is up to you. Mm-hmm. But let's just be honest. You're not being forced to pay this. This is not a criminal offense. So I look at it and I'm like, where these things are being used the most are in open highway areas where 10-mile-an-hour difference really doesn't make a difference.
Right.
We talked about that. If this is truly in the name of safety, then yes, utilize them in the school zones.
Yeah.
Let's keep traffic slowed down there. Utilize them on the highways where these guys are out there doing work, construction. Listen, Ohio is home of the orange barrel.
Yeah.
So every summer they bloom. And we've got more orange barrels than we have leaves on trees.
We need a lot of work.
We need a lot of work, man. Our roads are crumbling. I get it.
For infrastructure.
Yeah, drive to Columbus. I'm sure you have. And
once a month.
If you don't pass 1,000 barrels, I'll buy you dinner. But if safety is so important, where these guys' lives are on the line, why aren't they being used there?
Yeah. Well, and that was going to be my point, Bill, is, I'm supportive of whatever the police officer's safety is, as well as the individual that he or she is pulling over, because, and we had talked off air about this, but that situation in Cincinnati where that police officer got out of his car and was walking up to address somebody and another car passed him on the freeway and hit him and he died. Those instances, like, we want to avoid as many of those circumstances as possible. So in situations like that, the speed cameras, in my mind, are a great tool to be utilized to handle that problem or to avoid that problem or situation. But you, as the expert in the field, is who I rely on for insight. And so this conversation that we're having today is vitally important because it helps change the narrative a little bit. And to all your viewers that are listening and watching, I think it opens their eyes too to, I think, some data and statistics about, what's really going on with the speed cameras and how that works. And I guess my question, not to monopolize, but what is the difference between the states that are using them and the states that aren't? And is there significant difference in it? I don't know, not trying to put you on the spot, but
I believe, I want to say it was in Cincinnati, if my research tells me right, in reviewing some online information, that when they used it for a time frame and then they stopped using it because they said there really wasn't a significant enough change to justify it. And I'm saying Cincinnati. I could be wrong on that. Again, I don't remember a lot of what I did yesterday, but I can tell you my favorite songs of the 70s. So bear with me. But yeah, so I mean, I think when you look at it statistically, there probably isn't a big difference.
Yeah, okay. That's interesting to know because in my mind, I'm very pro states' rights, and we're seeing that outside of this conversation, we're seeing that in other policies that are being proposed, much by the left in California and New York. People are leaving those states and they're migrating to places like Florida and Texas. And so, I'm not really a one-size-fits-all kind of guy. I'd really like to see, the differences between the states, who's using them, who's not, and the data and the information behind that, because that tells a much larger story, I think.
Well, I think, when you look at it, I remember traveling down to Florida, they always had the white lines off to the side of the road. You knew every quarter mile it was marked. That was for air traffic, for the airplanes
right.
to clock your speed, and to have a police officer pull you over. Again, that's labor intensive. If you're paying for a plane, you're paying for officers to physically do the work. It's labor intensive and it costs money. These things really don't. These speed cameras generate big money.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a free fall of change just coming into the police departments. It's a couple million for these little small departments. I'm not quite sure what Liberty pulled in, out there on Route 11, but I'm sure they make a good enough amount of change to help, float their budget, and rightly so. I mean, I'm not saying take money away from the police departments in any way, shape, or form. They need more money. These guys need to be paid twice what they're making.
No, I agree.
I started in police work at making $9.97 an hour. I don't know, a $10 bill. My life was worth more than that. But you know what? It was a calling. It's something I did. And these guys are out there now, and having only been out for a year and a half, I would never go back into it.
Yeah.
God bless them. God bless these firefighters and EMS, because you know what? They're doing what nobody else wants to do, but wants to call as soon as they need them.
That breaks my heart hearing that, Bill. I'm disappointed because you were so respected in Howland, and like you mentioned, I always looked forward to seeing you in the halls, and your presence made me feel very safe in the school.
Well, thank you, sir. I appreciate it. You know what? And it's comments like that. Let me just, for those people out there listening, when you see the cops sitting at sheets and grabbing a cup of coffee in the morning and talking, I was one of them.
Yeah.
It's easy to get disgruntled in that profession.
Sure.
But for every person, every citizen that came up and said, hey, guys, thanks for what you're doing, it really helped you get on through that day and the next day.
Yeah.
That little bit of, hey, we do appreciate your service, means everything to these guys. So, if you see a cop out there and you see a fireman, they're not just being lazy. Give them the respect they deserve, and just help make their day. Let them know, hey, you know what? I appreciate what you're doing, and keep doing it. And you've got my support. That's
Good
my
advice.
Public service for all my FOP brothers.
That needs to be common practice amongst everybody throughout the United States, in my opinion.
Yeah, well, we need to get back to that, and let's hope that we do. All right. Well, this kind of streams me right into our next segment here called Reaction Time. Okay, so what I've gathered from all this and all my research and just my day-to-day groaning, we're all tired of being restricted by the governmental authority. They place an overburden of safeguards on our daily lives. We know this. The pandemic was probably a good one as an example. Masking, distancing, quarantines, vaccine mandates, blah, 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 blah. Listen, I'm all about freedom of choice. Always have been, always will be. If I think something might make me sick, I try to stay away from it. I protect myself. Don't tell me I have to. I'll make my own choice. But that's a whole different episode we're going to talk later.
For that one, too.
But I mean, enough is enough, right? The government's done enough. Where inflation's at 8.5%, almost 10%. We're gas over $4 a gallon. Food supplies are in shortage. Supplies of goods are in shortage. So they've done a bang-up job of, controlling what we can do. But on the topic of speed cameras, what's being done? Well, House Bill 62 in 2019 went into effect, and they saw what was going on with these speed cameras, and they said, hey, the state money given to local governments would be reduced dollar for dollar by the amount of fines collected by the traffic cameras. This is why many departments ended up getting rid of these cameras. So if they were making $2 million a year, that $2 million in state funding was cut back. So now they're even. So they had to make sure they made more than that $2 million a year to be on the plus side. So this is House Bill 62, which I think was a great bill. The city issuing speeding tickets would also have to pay the court costs on every ticket, whether the case went to court or not. Then there was another one. A Northeast Ohio lawmaker put a series of bills forth in the Ohio House with the aim of restricting and regulating the use of the traffic enforcement cameras across the state. Representative Tom Patton from Strongsville came out with House Bill 547, which basically said in order to use speed cameras, you've got to at least have a fire department or EMS in your municipality or township, right? So I get it. You can't just go out there. Hey, we've got one constable. We're going to use speed cameras. We don't have fire or EMS service. So that was House Bill 547. 548, you had to have a population more than 200 people if you were going to use speed cameras. House Bill 549, you couldn't issue tickets in excess of more than twice the number of your population. So if you had a population of 1,000, you couldn't issue tickets more than 2,000 tickets. So they kind of put a limit on it. House Bill 550, the citation revenue can't exceed 30% of the annual revenue for that municipality. So what's nice about that is I think there was a place where, I had it written down here. Let me see if I can pull it up. I think they had like 95% of their revenue was from speed cameras. I'm going to tell you, I think it's in here. I think it was like the city of Lindale or something like that. But they had 95% of their revenue was from speed cameras. So that surely helped. 551, 80% of all revenue must be used for the police department. I'm okay with that. These are all very, very common sense changes to the law. 552 was to prohibit placement of a traffic camera within a half mile of an interstate entrance, and House Bill 553 to prohibit a local authority located in a county with a population of 1 million or more from using traffic cameras to enforce traffic violations on interstate highways, which I'm not a big fan of that one. I think use them on the interstate highways, use them in the safety zones only, in the construction zones to keep people safe. Let's keep it there. So, as we react to what we've heard, listen, people, this is not the end-all, be-all.
Yeah.
These things are going to come and they're going to go. We're going to have to work with them. We're just trying to give you the information you need as you travel down the road. And when you go out to the mailbox and you find your picture on one of these citations, not to start sweating bullets over the money that you don't have right now because everybody's in a bind.
Well, and that was going to be my exact point, Bill. And I think this podcast today, this conversation is timely because you mentioned inflation, and every voter that I'm talking to is getting crushed. I've had some people reach out to me and say that they're choosing between groceries and gas for their vehicles, which is, again, heartbreaking. And so, this additional, burden or this additional, fee for the speed check through the speed cameras, I think your honesty about them, I think, is very valuable to everybody listening, that times are tough right now, and maybe it's not a best approach. You mentioned things at the grocery store. I hear that too, that cost of bread is up, cost of meat is up. And people, when they're put under pressurized situations like this, people tend to get a little more violent when resources are limited. People get aggressive. And so that our law and order conversation too, that changes the whole dynamic. So everything that's happening with inflation has been impacting, it ripples all the way through. Everything happening with gas prices, ripples all the way through.
We're just creating tension where it doesn't need to be created.
Exactly.
We're adding
right.
more fuel on this fire.
And so the speed cameras, I'm so appreciative of the honesty and the data and the information that you're putting out there, because I think folks that do feel, they get that acid in their stomach or that pit in their stomach when they receive one of these letters with their picture on it, they can kind of recognize that they do have options now, at least to decide what they think is best to do with that. Fee.
Here's the poor guy that's gotten through his bills for the month, and he's like, "Hey, we did good this month. I got an extra $150. And then he gets this ticket in the
$100
mail.
fine, yeah.
He said, "Are you kidding me?" I mean, I get it. I think we've all been there. We've all seen these things. We've all been victims of them. But I think mostly they take away discretion from the police officer who's out there to make the traffic
that's a great
stop.
point too.
Because, one thing I liked, I truly believed we all speed. We all have different reasons. We all have bad days. I've had people, traveling fast. I've stopped them in my cruiser, and I've come up to them, and you could just tell, listen, hey, my kids were late. I had to get the kid to school, blah, blah, blah. I still got to get to work, because if not, I'm going to get dock pay. I get it. And sometimes a warning there makes more impact on their driving than that citation.
Yeah.
And I think people were appreciative of that. All right, we got to wrap up. We're looking long on time, but man, I could talk to you all day,
No,
Nick.
feelings mutual, my friend. Thank you for having me.
Takes us into our last segment called the Safety 365 Recap. All right, just reflecting back on the lessons we learned today in our episode. Number one, President Biden's infrastructure law provides $1.5 billion towards the use of speed camera devices. 19 states plus the District of Columbia use these cameras. These speed cameras are conducted with private companies for shared profits. House Bill 62 curbed the profiteering by reducing state funds dollar for dollar. Citations, these speed camera citations are a civil violation and do not affect your driving record or your insurance rates. Failure to pay the fine or appeal results in being turned over to a collection agency at best. Does not impact your credit rating among the three major credit reporting agencies. And it's less about safety and more about profiting to offset budget shortfalls. It really is, people. And in the end, the decision to pay the fine or not, completely up to you. You do what your conscience guides you to do. That's pretty much what we learned today. Looking ahead, our next episode, we're going to have we'll be talking about home security, and our guest is going to be the operations manager of Howland Alarm, Jake Daugherty. And look forward to talking to him about how to keep yourself safe in these more violent times that we're living in. So. Special thanks to Nick Santucci for coming in, taking the time out of his day to come and talk to us. And let's when you get to the voting booth, remember that name, Nick Santucci. Special thanks to our show sponsor, Bolo Stick LLC, the door barricade device providing safety and security to homes, schools, churches, and business locations across 42 states in the United States and internationally in 6 countries. Visit them at www.bolostick.com. And as always, thank you to the Trumbull Career and Technical Center for making this podcast possible. For Safety 365, I'm Bill Barna, reminding you to be aware, be proactive, and stay safe.
Safety 365.